Welcome to Season 2 of the Practicing Presence podcast, where spiritual formation is fueled through a variety of practices rather than a single prescriptive time of devotion, where we discuss different spiritual practices that help us be more present with God, others, and ourselves.
What's going on, practitioners? How y'all doing?
What's up, friends? It's a Monday. You know how that be.
Mondays. Gotta love Mondays. But we are going to continue this conversation of spiritual pursuit, personal exploration as pursuit of divine,
I've titled the series Self-Love as Divine Love. Yeah. And I get that that's a strange, really weird conjunction. But it's all rooted in the fact that we, as the human, are the epitome of God's creation. We are the pinnacle creation, and we are made in God's image and likeness. And so this pursuit of finding ourselves and who God has asked us and wants us to be and loving that person is, in fact, the act of loving the divine, because you are a part of and connected to the divine. The divinity within you matters.
Yeah.
It really plays off the episode that we had about the image and the body as the temple.
Right.
Because throughout the Old Testament, one of the things that we commonly find is God seems to be real concerned about idolatry.
Yeah.
Clayton, what's idolatry?
Worshipping, I don't know. You asking like an actual definition, or are you talking about something a little bit more larger? Like, are you talking about worshiping anything that's not God, or are you talking about worshiping specific like things?
Okay, yes. That's a great distinction, because the Bible makes it sound like idolatry is worshiping anything that's not Yahweh.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's not actually what I meant. What I meant by idolatry is the literal definition of the word, that it's worshiping an idol.
Right.
An image of a god.
Right.
This is a very big issue in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for lots of reasons. Number one, all of ancient culture had images and idols for their gods.
Yeah.
They want something to look at in order to worship. This is why it's so hard for people to pray today.
Right.
Because we just ask them to close their eyes or look at the ground and just like talk.
Yeah, and it's also so interesting to think about this. I had never thought about this before. The other religions of the ancient world were already fairly established with liturgy.
What do you mean?
Knowing that they were making idols to Baal, right? Or whatever other pagan god that you can come up with. These other cultures are already doing this like higher liturgy type thing. And the Israelites don't really have that.
You're absolutely right, because the ancient world, especially ancient Near Eastern cultures, what we call like the early part of the Old Testament culture, it's very like competitive in the nature of the divine and the divine within tribes.
Yeah.
Well, not tribes, but within people group, ethnic groups. Because, like, for instance, we have the story of Noah, Genesis 6 through Genesis 9. And then we have a genealogy in Genesis 10 of Noah, from Noah to Noah's 3 sons and the ways in which those sons go throughout the world. Mm-hmm. Our earliest writings of Genesis and the Noah story don't even come close to the amount, just both in volume and in date, of other stories of a flood. There's a famous one called the Epic of Gilgamesh. And it's a Canaanite story of the flood.
Yeah.
And even the most conservative of scholars will tell you it predates the Christian story of Noah by hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So yeah, there were other religions around. There were other ways of life, and they had their own liturgies.
Yeah.
Now, this is jumping ahead. Oh, go ahead.
My point in saying that was that, like, it feels only natural that the Israelites would default to this sort of
correct, because they
idolatry.
look around. Well, and we have an example of this. When they go at Judges, at the end of Judges, when they go to God, what do they say? Give us a king so that we can be like everybody else.
Yeah.
They have a pattern of wanting to be like everybody else. This is why the holiness movement is such a big deal to God. Is because they're like, I don't want you to be like everybody else.
I want you to be different.
I want you to be different. Now, I wanted to pick what that different looks like, and there are some things, but they are constantly looking to everybody else to show them how to do it.
Well, and God's also been trying to build this different look for a hot minute by the time
Correct.
you get to Judges.
Yeah, by the time you get to the end of Judges, God been trying to do this with these people for who knows how long.
Yeah.
I mean, we really can't even.
It started with Abraham and the circumcision thing. Like,
Yeah.
this is a definitive moment where you now look different.
Well, yeah, because
than everyone
nobody's
else.
doing that.
Yeah.
Nobody's circumcising anybody.
Yeah.
This is also proof of Christendom in America because most American boys are circumcised.
Correct.
And don't give me no health stuff because the rest of the world don't do it that way. Check yourself. So they are constantly looking for an image. And there's a famous story that happens at the beginning of Exodus. Do you want to tell this story? You know what story I'm talking about? Do you want to tell this story?
What story are you talking about?
So Exodus 3, God calls Moses. Moses goes back to Egypt after his whole fiasco, right? You know, where he kills that guy. He goes back, administers these 10 plagues against Pharaoh. He redeems the people out of Egypt. They're on the run. Then they get to the Red Sea crossing, the famous Red Sea crossing. When they settle after the Red Sea crossing, there's a famous story about a golden calf. Do you remember the story?
So Moses goes up to Sinai to commune with God and receive the 10 Commandments. And Moses is up there so long, they think he
up
died.
there for a hot minute. To be fair, he up there for a hot minute.
He up there for a minute. And everyone starts thinking, oh, that dude dead.
He be dead.
So maybe this God thing's really not all that. This Yahweh thing is not really all that. And so Aaron,
Who is who?
who is Moses' brother and also the spiritual leader of these people.
Well, second in command. Yeah, second in command to Moses.
Second in command to Moses, but like ends up being, it's the whole thing.
Father of the Levites.
Yeah, the whole thing. This dude ends up commanding all the Israelites to bring all their gold. They smelt it all down and they forged the image of a calf. And let's stop and talk about that for a minute. Do you know how long that would take to get everyone's gold, melt it all down, form it into a calf, and make it idolic? Like an actual...
but Moses up there for a hot minute.
Yeah, that should also just tell you how long he's up there and how long they're thinking that this is okay.
Yeah.
By the time Moses comes down, they're probably fully solidified in this.
Oh, yeah.
Idolatry.
Yeah, the calf's there. They worshiping it on rig. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's established at that point.
It is established.
They're building habits and patterns.
Yeah, for sure. And so it's just a very strange thing.
Now, here's what I also want to say to you. That shows the disposition that these are a people in pursuit of their likeness to God. Mm-hmm. Because These are a people without a religion. They don't got one.
Yeah.
Remember, we don't get the development of the religion until
much later.
Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. That's where we get told how to do this crap.
Yeah.
Everything else before, that's just history. It's just stories of a family and promises of a covenant.
So we might end up turning this into 20 minutes because I got a question for you.
Okay.
It's a little bit of a deviation.
If it's too much, I'm going to tell you no, because it's already taken longer than I thought it would.
Okay. If God is learning how to be God.
Yeah, conversation for another day. Back to what we're trying to say here. These are people who are trying, they have this innate desire to express their divinity. And there are people without a religion. And Moses, their leader, is up there trying to ask God how to have this religion. And they can't help themselves. They make an idol. And this becomes such a heinous thing. This becomes a big ordeal. It's a whole thing. God can't stand it. God tells Moses that they're doing it while he's up there on the mountain. It becomes a whole thing. And idolatry, because remember, this is in the early part of Exodus. The story's only just begun. And idolatry becomes this common motif that anytime people step out of line, they don't continue to do the things of God. There are two things: injustice and idolatry. Injustice and idolatry. Injustice and idolatry. They always go hand in hand. Idolatry is heinous for two reasons. One, first and foremost, is heinous because you're worshiping something other than God. God should be the only object of our worship. Now, what do I mean by worship? What do you mean when you say worship? I don't mean sitting around a campfire singing Kumbaya. I mean, that is a form of worship, but if that is the all-encompassing definition of your worship, you have severely limited the ways in which you praise God and God's activity in the world.
Yeah. So let's actually just say that a little bit more pointedly. If you are only worshiping on Sundays during the big light show, you're missing something.
Yeah, because worship is praising God for who they are and living in accordance.
Yeah, participating in it yourself.
Yeah, participating in the actions of divinity. That is worship. And so worshiping an idol becomes a problem. But the other thing is, I think, and I don't hear enough people talk about this, idolatry requires that an idol be made.
Yeah.
If idolatry requires that an idol be made, then it requires that a new image of God be created, which diminishes the fact that you are the image of God, that I am the image of God, that every human that walks this earth is the image of God. If we choose to make an idol, if we choose to make a new image of God to worship, we have missed the point that God already indwelled their image in us.
You're diminishing the image of God in yourself.
Correct. You are saying that the image that God gave you is not good enough.
Yeah.
Divine love is self-love. You cannot say that there needs to be a new image of God because you are the image of God. Now, the safeguard here is we can't worship humans.
Right.
Humans are not God. We're not going to make pharaohs. We're not going to recreate Caesars and put faces on coins and none of that. We're not going to.
Well, we've already done that.
Well, no. But Caesars actually thought they were God. Like all of the Caesars.
No, I heard. But you said we're not going to put faces on coins. We've already done that in America.
We have.
And so
everybody does that.
Everybody does that. Let's also not miss that piece, though.
No, you're right. But when we choose to create an image of God, we are devaluing God's promise to us, God's declaration to us that we are God's image. We don't need an image of God. We don't need an idol because we are indwelled with the God that we reflect.
Yep.
Divine love is self-love because you are the image of God.
Thanks for listening to the Practicing Presence podcast hosted by WellHouse Church. Be sure to give us a rating and a review if you enjoyed the episode. It's free and it helps us immensely. Also, feel free to check out our other podcasts.